Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to the Attrition Sim Race Campus Oval Series. Tonight, we are here for round number 2 of Season 9 up in Stafford Springs, Connecticut for 100 laps at the Stafford Motor Speedway. Coming in at half a mile or 0.8 kilometers in length, this is one of the more average tracks on our schedule in terms of overall length, but in terms of driving, it's actually a bit of a difficult one. This is an incredibly flat track with very little banking compared to some of the other short tracks we visit, so it should be quite a bit of a challenge on these drivers and their machines. Definitely should be a bit of an interesting one, and interestingly enough, Stafford Motor Speedway, a track that's not particularly known for its street stock racing. Stafford is actually pretty widely considered to be the track that back in the late 60s pretty much saved modified racing from more or less from extinction. This track and the family that owned it at the time put a lot of effort into making the modified division more accessible to race fans and to drivers interested in joining the sport alike. And pretty much when people think of modified racing, they think of Stafford Motor Speedway. So bringing these street stocks out here, not the most common of combinations, but let's be real here. Street stocks run at effectively every short track in America in some capacity or another. So it's not like this is a brand new combination that's never been tried before, but a little bit less of one that is really known in this area. And I think that it will definitely be coming out to be a fairly interesting event here tonight. Of course, if you want to come out and join ASRC, be sure to check us out at www.asrcracing.com, or be sure to check them out on Twitter at ASRC Racing, or simply look them up on the iRacing League directory. Folks are always welcome and encouraged to join, and pretty much the only requirements for joining is to be a respectful driver. So if you're looking for another league to join, Monday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern, practice at 9 p.m. Eastern, be sure to keep an eye out for the Attrition Sim Race Campus Oval Series. That said, looks like drivers are starting to make their way down to the track, so let's take a quick look down at our starting lineup for the evening here tonight. Starting out on the pole here this evening, driving the Rex's Garage entry, the driver out of Illinois, it's Steven Rex starting on the pole. To his outside teammate Travis Sukup in the 145 Dropping Bombs Racing entry, and just behind the two of them, back in P number 3, rounding out the top 3 in a bit of a clean sweep for this racing team. That's Tyler McRae in the 99, also for Dropping Bombs Racing. Back in P number 4, going to be the 07 of Zachary Nelson, making up row number 2 with Bill Watkins in that 337 and Jason Gardner in the 93, making up row number 3. Back in the 7th position, making up row number 4, going to be the 70 of Jason Mong and the 24 Maltesers entry of Corey Logan. Finally, rounding out this field here tonight, going to be the 48 of Robert Kelm and the 85 of Brian Sabelski, coming into this race with no practice and no qualifying under his belt. He quite literally put his name on the registration form pretty much within the last minute or so he was eligible to. I believe he actually put his name on the registration form after this broadcast started, so that just gives you an idea of how close Mr. Brian Sabelski is cutting the margins in that number 85 machine. That said, Sabelski was the champion back during the last season and picked up the championship 3 other times before that, so Gonna have to keep an eye on that driver because it's not usual that we see him starting that far back in the field, and it'll be interesting to see just how quickly, if at all, he'll be able to make it back up to the front and contend with these 3 Droppin' Bombs racing entries. Looks like 10 cars are going to be making the field here tonight, 100 laps up on the board. As usual, with ASRC's Oval Series, at least for this season, yellow flags not going to count for the overall race duration, so gonna have to keep that in mind because that's a new rule here for the series, that if you bring the yellow out, you're going to be extended the length of this race one way or another. That said, pace car is off. Green flag up in the air. We are racing here at Stafford Motor Speedway. Everyone off to a fairly solid start, and actually Rex contending for the lead down on that inside line, which is not super unusual to see here on some short track racing, but Sukup is still very much in the mix here despite being on the outside line, which is very interesting to see. Traditionally, especially back last week at the Nashville Fairgrounds, the outside line, if you were restarting there, you were basically guaranteed to be falling back many positions. But it looks like these drivers are actually making it work, though they have single filed out. These 3 teammates not going to be contesting for positions early on. They're just going to be riding it out and looking to get a 1-2-3 finish for the Droppin' Bombs racing team. Of course, all of them want to get their name in the winner's book and have that little bit of notoriety to go with it. So they're not going to play nice for too long, but for right now, going to be working as a team and just trying to hold on to the podium here tonight. Bit further back in the field, side by side, coming down the front stretch, that is Kelm and Watkins side by side going down into turn number 1. Looks like Kelm going to fall back a bit, but Watkins potentially overdriving the corner a little because he's way up high. Not enough for Kelm to be able to capitalize on it. That said, again, going way up high in that 337 entry. Looks like the numbers have actually been taken off of Watkins' car, so he's driving that white car right there. No numbers on it, but on the time of scoring, he at least is coming up as the 337 for Dirtbag Racing. Getting a bit loose off the corner, but it's just not enough for Kelm to be able to capitalize on, falling back just a little bit. And he's got Brian Sabelski right behind him in that 85 looking to try and make the move. Definitely a bit of a hairy place to be, trying to catch up and make a pass to get yourself up at least a little bit more in this race in the early goings. But you have a driver that is a multiple time champion right on your bumper. That is a lot to be having weighing down on your conscience, especially early on in the race. Holding off Sabelski, not going to be any easy feat for any of these drivers, so I'd imagine that Kelm might be pushing a little bit harder than he would be otherwise to try and keep the spot up on that number 85, and sure enough, going to be pulling down to the inside of Bill Watkins, still side by side heading into turn number 3, but Watkins again drifting up the track just a bit, and he's going to lose the position to Sabelski and Kelm just like that. Not out of the picture though, Jason Mong a little bit further behind in that unsponsored number 70 machine. Mong currently rounding out this field here tonight, but still 90 laps to go. That is no laughing matter, so still plenty of time for these drivers to get themselves sorted out and potentially pick up another couple of positions, because after all, only on week 2 of this 12-week season, but best to try and get points picked up early than have to really push yourself at the end of the season. A little bit further up the track, Zachary Nelson in that 07 up in P number 4, having a pretty solid run in that 07 machine. Nelson made his rookie debut last season in the late model, and he had a bit of trouble in that higher horsepower car back in the late model last season, but now that we swapped to the street stocks, Nelson putting on a heck of a run here tonight, up inside the top 5, looking to potentially get on the podium. Definitely a really good place for that 07 car to be in. Always exciting to see improvement out of the drivers here with Attrition Sim Race Campus. Definitely going to have to be keeping an eye on that 07 machine throughout the season to see just where he's able to bring it in that Dirt Vision entry. A little bit further up the field, it looks like Tyler McRae fallen back a little bit from our 2 race leaders, not all that much. These 3 all under a blanket. They all, of course, are for the same organization. Their 3 cars come out of the same stable, so it makes sense that all 3 of them are doing similar in terms of pace. These 3 practice together, they test together, and of course, ASRC's Oval Series is open setup, so they generally run the same settings under the hood of these race cars as well, just getting these cars tuned how they like them, and sometimes that is all the difference. But we've got a battle for the lead here. Steven Rex going way up high, and that's going to allow McRae and Sukup to get around. That's going to bump him back 2 positions. Rex was the original pole sitter of this race and was in the lead up until that point, so battles starting to break out between teammates. Gonna have to keep an eye on these 3 and see how things end up playing out. That would be a bit of a tragedy if teammates ended up taking each other out of the race, which is not something I've ever seen out of the Droppin' Bombs racing team, but back when I was a competitor here in the ASRC Oval Series, there was a couple of occasions where I had incidents with my teammates. Generally fault entirely of my own, like I can't put that on my teammates at all, but all too real of an option out there on these short tracks, especially when drivers are so similar on speed. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of a mistake to send teammates out of the race. A little bit further back, Corey Logan and Brian Sabelski battling it out just a bit. Logan in that number 24 machine, up a position from where they qualified, so always good to be moving up throughout the race in that number 24 machine, driving the Maltesers entry. Sabelski did manage to get around them just a couple of laps ago, but Logan still keeping pretty decent pace with that number 85 machine, so not out of this battle quite yet, but Sabelski on a bit of a hot streak here tonight. Started all the way back in the back, no qualifying, no practice, and already up 4 positions, just 22 laps in, but still has not yet breached the top 5 in the 85 entry, so still a long ways to go if he wants to try and put himself on the podium and pick up some more points. Last week back at the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, he finished back in P number 3, so he did get a podium, but potentially not the finish he wanted to start off this season, because Tyler McRae in that number 99 on a bit of a mission this season. McRae was unable to attend the first half of Season 8, but then he decided to show up in the latter half of Season 8 and managed to pick up 6 wins in that one season, tying the record for the most wins in the ASRC Oval Series in a single season. But Sabelski showed up for every race and was just so consistent every single time that he still managed to get away with the championship by just a couple of points. So now McRae here starting at the beginning of the season, and that is going to be putting a bit of pressure on Sabelski to really bring his A game out here to the field this season if he wants to contend for championship number 5 for the number 85 entry. Of course, Sabelski always streams here with the ASRC Oval Series, so If you want to check out the point of view of one of these drivers, be sure to check out twitch.tv/Nihon Tiger for the onboard perspective of Mr. Brian Sabelski and perhaps a little bit of insight into what goes on in the minds of these drivers out here on the track, because certainly their perspective is a whole lot different than that of me up here in the commentator's booth and what is effectively just the spectator's stand. So twitch.tv/Nihon Tiger, definitely be sure to check out the driver of that number 85 machine. Currently closest battle on the speedway here between our race leaders Travis Sukup, Steven Rex, Tyler McRae, all under a bit of a blanket here tonight. Rex potentially looking to try and make the move on Sukup. Gonna back out of it just a little bit in that 10 machine, but he was right up there on the bumper heading down into turn number 1, but decided maybe not the play to try and make the pass right now, which is sometimes the best decision. If you really try to push the car early on to try and make a pass, sometimes you're just going to burn the tread off those tires. And ultimately, it matters where you are at the end of lap 100, not the end of lap 30. There are additional sets of tires provided to these drivers should they decide that they want to use them, but for the most part, unless there's a late race caution, tire changing probably not something that we are going to be seeing this season. It is something we saw happening a bit in the late models of previous seasons, but with the late models you have a bit more of a well-trained pit crew and the tire changes happen a bit faster than they do here in the street stocks. The street stocks, it can take a pretty hefty chunk of time to get tires on those cars, and don't even get me started on fuel. Taking fuel in these street stocks takes a ridiculous amount of time. I think it's close to about 50 seconds for a full tank of gas in the street stock. So because of that, we have decided that fuel tanks going to be large enough to allow drivers to complete the race for the most part. Could be potentially seeing some exceptions at some of the larger tracks that we sometimes go to, like Phoenix, which is not on the schedule this season. So I don't think fuel will really come into a play at all. Maybe, possibly at the USA International Speedway next week. Looks like that will be the longest track on the schedule this season, so we could maybe see it have an effect there, but I'm leaning towards probably not. That said, Sukup job is getting just a little bit harder because just in front of him it's that 337 of Bill Watkins, the first driver on the speedway to potentially have his head on the chopping block to be put a lap down here tonight. And look at the time and scoring, 20 seconds back from Sukup technically, which gives you an idea of what sort of lap times are being set on the speedway here tonight. Last time by, fastest lap on the track was Travis Sukup in that 145, setting a 21.4 second lap. So not as quick in terms of laps as we saw back last week at Nashville, but still pretty quickly ticking the laps down at this speedway. And Bill Watkins going to pull it down low and allow our race leaders to get by. McRae, a little bit of trouble getting around that 337. That's going to cost him a little bit of time, bump him back down just a little bit. And further back, we've got a battle breaking out here. That is Logan, Mong, and I believe Kelm as well, all battling it out here for the 7th, 8th, and 9th positions, but they all have a bit to worry about as well because Travis Sukup not all that far behind, so these three having quite the battle for position, but they may potentially have to break that up to let the leaders by. Of course, No blue flags here, especially not blue flags that have to be listened to. You are allowed to battle for position to stay on the lead lap, but generally here with ASRC, we definitely see drivers pick the respectful sportsmanship route and just let the leaders get by them like that. Corey Logan going to be letting off just a little bit and letting these leaders get around them, which is going to take them out of the battle for position, but going to allow the leaders to keep their little shindig going. And sure enough, Mong and Kelm gonna end up letting the leaders by here soon enough as well, and then we could potentially see Corey Logan getting back into the fray. These two currently the closest battle on the speedway. They have replaced the battle for the lead between Sukup and Rex. These two in a bubble, and looks like Mong going to drift up the track a bit in that number 70. Not too badly, still getting a decent run off the corner, but does not look like he's getting the speed he needs to try and get around Kelm. And sure enough, there's your race leader going for the pass. Travis Sukup going to be bumping Mong down to the next car a lap down, and Robert Kelm literally right there as well, so we could see Kelm being scored a lap down as well in that number 48 machine, and a caution could potentially throw things off for these drivers. And sure enough, Kelm going to be the next driver a lap down, so if a caution were to come out, Kelm would be the next driver, and almost a little bit of contact there to potentially be bringing the yellow out. Sure enough, I start talking about cautions, and all of a sudden these drivers start getting real impatient with each other. Mong making the move on Kelm, using him getting out of the way of the race leaders as a little bit of an opportunity to try and make a pass, and now they're right back at it again with P number 2 of Steven Rex right there in trouble. Robert Kelm locking up the right front and getting incredibly loose. That's going to allow Rex and McRae to get by without issues, but that's going to hurt his long run speed for sure, and also potentially ruin his chances of catching up to Mong. That was a big wiggle in that number 48 machine, and locking up your tires like that, definitely not what you want to be doing. But it's like I said coming into this race, Stafford is a track that requires a lot of braking and a lot of forces being put both on these drivers and their cars, and you can see him having that wiggle again in that 48, locking up the tires just a little bit. You get on these brakes too hard and you're going to be sending your car into the wall, but at the same time you brake not hard enough and you're just not going to rotate at all. So there's a very fine line that these drivers are having to balance as Kelm gets around Mong again there. And it's a delicate balance that if you don't play perfectly, you could be, if not hurting your overall long run speed, then potentially totaling your car. You can see damage on the right sides of a lot of these street stocks from drivers having already had impacts with the outside wall, either from overdriving the corner or potentially making car-to-car contact from not cornering correctly or not doing an overtake correctly. But damage on the 70, damage on the 48, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of damage on our race leaders as well. That said, officially cross the halfway point, so clock is ticking. If you want to start getting some moves made, you're going to have to do it sooner rather than later, because there's not a whole lot of time left to make things work for you. Currently 18 minutes into the race. That includes the 2 laps of pacing before the green flag came out, so call it roughly 15 or so minutes of racing left if we stay green, so still a little bit of time, but that goes away really quickly when you are in the heat of the moment, and especially here between Kelm and Mong. these two drivers really going to be pushing with everything they have under the hoods of their street stocks from now on to try and, if not pick up another position, then at least hold on to what you have. But Kelm really wobbling on corner exit, pretty much corner after corner now, so definitely has his work cut out for him. In trouble. A massive slide for Mong there. He managed to save the car, but that was darn near sideways out of turn number 4. These two still the closest battle on the speedway, and both of them really pushing their cars to the hardest that they can. Both of them having troubles on corner exit. Mong almost getting into the outside wall there, having to oversteer just a bit. But Kelm is having so many issues as well that Mong not entirely out of this fight. Call it about half a second between the two of them. Two different lines being taken through the corner, and you can see Kelm trying to do a little bit of a higher line. And now this time Mong going to be trying it out as well. Both drivers really going down on the idea of, if you are driving in the tire treads of the car in front of you, then you are not passing the car in front of you. So both drivers really trying to use up as much of the track as they can and try and see if there's just any sort of slight adjustments they can make to their line to try and make overtakes. And sure enough, Mong is closing the gap between himself and Kelm, so we could potentially see him get the pass here sooner or later. Pretty much every corner now, he is narrowing that gap just a little bit more and more. As the leaders come across the line, could be putting us on lap number 60. 40 laps to go. Another battle breaking out up in the front. Tyler McRae has caught back up to Steven Rex. Of course, I say that, and Tyler McRae ends up in the outside wall. That's going to slow him down just a little bit, but he's still pushing as hard as he can in that number 99 to try and catch up to and get around his teammate. McRae did win the race back at the Nashville Mini last week, so he does have a little bit of a cushion to work with, but it's like I said, definitely want to be trying to pick up as much points as possible early on in the season. We do have 4 drop weeks to work with, but pretty much the only reason that Sabelski was able to take the championship last season is because he just managed to get so many points throughout the season that even with drop weeks calculated in, he still had just a really solid buffer to work with between himself and McRae. But sure enough, McRae going to get around Rex, so that's going to bump him up to P number 2. 3.5 seconds, though, is quite the distance to try and make up between himself and Sukup, so going to be a bit of difficulty and trouble. Steven Rex looking like he's trying to go down to pit lane and then overdriving the corner, and looks like that's what Corey Logan down on pit lane as well. Whether these drivers are taking tires or fuel, I'm not entirely sure. Looks like it's going to be tires for Corey Logan and tires for Steven Rex as well. Both drivers falling down a couple of positions. And as Rex enters pit lane, he is going to be scored a lap down here tonight, so we will have to see. Will our race leaders come down pit lane and potentially cycle things out here, or are we going to see only 3 drivers finish on the lead lap because of pit strategy? And it looks like 67 laps in the books here, so 33 to go, 2/3 of the way through this race, and Rex, has his work cut out for him now. Going to be going around Robert Kelm without too much ease on those brand new tires. Kellum currently being scored back to the 8th position. A little bit further up, a battle breaking out as well. Ryan Sabelski trying to get around Zachary Nelson. Both these drivers also being scored as a lap down. Nelson setting down some very fast lap times though, so Sabelski all over the bumper, but will he be able to make the pass? And sure enough, Tyler McRae down on pit lane as well. It looks like I was mistaken. Fuel might potentially be a danger for these drivers, because I see no other reason for these drivers to be coming down pit lane. But again, trouble, another driver overshooting pit entry and ending up in the grass. No caution going to come out, of course, because no actual incident that occurred, and certainly not an incident that had any danger to other drivers on the speedway. So no caution going to come out, but that is going to hurt Nelson and Rex, as there are bonus points for finishing the race without any incidents, and those off tracks for these two drivers are going to be taking away from that. Travis Sukup still out front in that 145 as our race leader. Only himself and Gardner out on the lead lap. Sabelski has also not pit in that number 85, so we'll have to keep an eye on him and see how things cycle out for him. But still, potentially, we could see only 3 drivers end up on the lead lap. And sure enough, Sabelski gonna come down to pit lane, and Sabelski also going to end up in the grass just a little bit in that 85, so looks like potentially another driver not getting the incident-free race bonus points. That's doesn't sound like a lot, but it adds up, and those bonus points could make the difference in a championship at the very end of a season. Right now, pretty much everyone fairly spread out around the speedway. Currently the closest battle on the speedway between Kelm and Watkins, and actually Kelm is really quickly closing that gap in the number 48, catching up to Jason Mong. Still half a second between these two drivers, but Kelm is managing to close the gap fairly quickly, though. Bit of a bobble off the corner in that Dirty Mo Media entry. 25 laps to go left in the race, and sure enough, Travis Sukup going to be coming down pit lane, so it looks like fuel is an issue after all. These street stocks, smaller fuel tank than I was expecting them to have. And that's going to leave Jason Gardner as the only car on the lead lap that has not yet come down pit lane in that number 93. Depending on how quick Sukup's pit stop is, sure enough, Gardner now being scored as the race leader. So Gardner looking to be picking up the bonus points for having led at least one lap. A couple of different bonus points up for grabs here in the ASRC Oval Series, and it does seem like that factors into a lot of these drivers' strategies, is trying to collect a couple extra bonus points and use those to go a fairly long way in the championship. So bonus point for leading at least one lap, bonus point for leading the most laps, bonus point for starting on the pole of the race, and then a scaling bonus depending on how many incidents you have, with, of course, a perfect incident-free race getting you the most bonus points. So I'm going to have to keep an eye on these drivers and their strategies, because sometimes trying to just pick up these bonus points can go a long way in actually helping you towards the championship, even more so than finishing position does. Of course, finishing position, always very important, and that's always going to be a big deal, but even then, especially for the incident-free race bonus, because that is the biggest bonus that you can pick up, sometimes it is worth it to try and pick up that bonus than go for a risky move and make contact with another car and lose that bonus. But looking throughout the field right now, it looks like the couple of drivers that had the off tracks for improper pit entry are pretty much the only drivers on the speedway with any real incident points. So a very clean race for all these drivers, especially for the street stock, which is a car that has a bit of a reputation behind it for having messy and unprofessional racing, both on iRacing and the real world. Definitely great to be seeing a race that has been as clean as this one. A little bit further back, Tyler McRae getting around that lapped car of Watkins and putting the pressure down on his teammate yet again. That 10 of Steven Rex. No longer is this a battle for second, but still a battle for the podium, and depending on if Gardner is able to stretch his fuel to the end of this race, that could ruin the dream of a 1-2-3 finish for Dropping Bombs Racing. But sure enough, I say that Jason Gardner going to be coming down pit lane to make his stop, and that will cycle Sukup back into the race lead and probably put Rex and McRae into P2 and 3 as well. So sure enough, Dropping Bombs Racing now going to be P1, 2, and 3. The entire podium dominated by this race team here this evening. And with this pit cycle putting Jason Gardner a lap down, now the question is, how friendly will these three teammates be with each other? Or are they going to start breaking out the fisticuffs and the chrome horn to really try and pick up these positions against one another? Sure enough, looks like McRae not going to hesitate. He's going to send it down low and get around that number 10 entry. Rex going to be trying to do the crossover there and having a bit of an issue with his transponder. He's gotten it down to inside of McRae. McRae going to go up wide, and Rex technically going to be the leader of that battle coming off the corner, but still side by side down into turn number 3 and coming out of turn number 4. McRae scraping against the outside wall, having a little bit of an advantage. It actually looks like he's getting a solid run off the corner on the outside line, but these two drivers are really duking it out with each other now. 13 laps to go, not a whole lot of time left to settle this score. It does look like Rex is going to be able to make the pass, but now McRae's doing the crossover side by side down the front stretch. Neither of these drivers willing to give up. Both of them 6 seconds back from Sukup. The chances of them getting up to the lead in 12 laps, not very good, but this battle for second only getting more intense with every lap between Rex and McRae, constantly crossing each other over. Given a little bit of a bump that time by, just a little bit of a nudge, and it's not enough to make the overtake, but even then, it'll be 10 to go now. McRae, if he's going to make this pass, he's going to really need to be putting a bit of extra pressure down on that 10 of Steven Rex. Rex going down on the apron just a little bit, trying to use as much of the track as possible to get even just a little bit of a run off the corner. Going below the apron, of course, not necessarily illegal, but not entirely what you want to be doing depending on how your car is set up and depending on what track you're at. Rex going to be going up way high this time and trying to get the run off the high line of the corner. It's going to work out for him. But for the most part, putting your tires down on the apron, really slippery, really difficult to handle. But this time, both drivers are going to be going down below that line and both of them loose off the corner. You can see how trying to go and take the shortest possible way around the speedway is affecting the handling of these two race cars, and the general consensus here is it's not very good, but sometimes you have to make sacrifices to make passes. And sure enough, side by side down the front stretch again, Steven Rex getting into the outside wall. That's going to really hurt his momentum heading into turn 1. Sure enough, Rex losing a bit of time on McRae, but slowly getting it back up. 6 laps to go. Clock is ticking. These two cars by far the closest on the speedway. Gardner and Sabelski, a 7.5 second gap between those two, and then the closest battle for the cars that are 2 laps down is about 3 seconds. So these two battling it out for P number 2, closest drivers on the speedway. Going to be making it 5 laps to go this time by, and McRae is building up a gap on Rex. Rex really falling back. That was almost 0.2 of a second for the driver of that number 10. So it's not looking like he is going to be having a very easy time catching back up to his teammate. But now McRae has a lap car just in front of him. That's the 70 of Jason Mong. Mong going up high, going to be letting McRae get by, and Rex really trying to catch up. You can see him getting loose off the corner there. 3 laps to go. Rex has his work cut out for him if he wants to get back up to McRae here. He's got to get around that 70 of Mong, and that's not going to be very easy. That said, still potential for someone to make a mistake and bring the caution out, and that could dramatically change up the outlook of this race. But with 2 laps to go, I don't think that is going to be the case unless someone makes a serious oopsie here tonight. That said, round in turn number 4 and head down the front stretch. Going to be bringing out the white flag, Mr. 145 of Travis Sukup. Heading through the corner. No opposition on the backstretch. An 8.8 second lead for the driver of that 145. And coming out of turn number 4, Travis Sukup going to bring home the win here tonight in that number 145 for Dropping Bombs Racing. So, we will give Sukup just a little bit to celebrate, and then we will be taking a quick little bit of a break, and then gonna call up our race winners and see if we can't get some interviews with our top 3 finishers here this evening. But of course, a big congratulations to that 145 of Travis Sukup for getting what I believe is his first win here in ASRC. But don't go anywhere, race fans. We will be back in just a minute. Alrighty, race fans, and welcome back. 100 laps in the books here at the Stafford Motor Speedway here tonight, and up in the booth with us for, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, his first ever win here with the ASRC Overall Series. Gonna be that 145 of Mr. Sukup. How are you feeling now that everything's said and done here tonight?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely a great run put on by the entirety of the Dropping Bombs racing team. Y'all all had some very fast cars out there here tonight, but another win gonna be under your belt and definitely a very nice little cushion to lean on heading in later into the season. You feeling like the odds are in your favor to potentially be picking up a championship here for season number 9?
I'm gonna give it a whirl, but it's gonna be pretty tough, I'm sure. I usually get unlucky.
Well, a long season ahead of us and 4 drop weeks to work with, of course, so definitely going to be exciting to see how the cards end up falling. Next week, going to be heading out to the USA International Speedway. That track you got any particular qualms about?
What was that track again?
USA International.
I guess that's considered my home track. Don't mean anything, but that's one of the tracks I used to run with a long time ago.
Well, maybe you'll have a little bit of a home field advantage. Who knows? Definitely think it should be a fun race, and of course, always looking forward to seeing y'all being out there. But before I let you go and celebrate your win, there anyone you'd like to thank on the side of that 145 machine for getting you up here?
Just those two guys who are running with me there because we bounce things back. I learned a lot from both of them, so that's where we get to working, I guess.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out, and of course, big congratulations on the win, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
All right, thank you. See you then.
And finishing back in P number 2, driving that number 99, also for Dropping Bombs Racing, the driver out of Chesterfield, Virginia, Tyler McRae. How are you feeling now that everything's said and done here tonight?
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy for Mike to get that win here. This league and another league, he's been so close, and I'm happy for him to get it.
Yeah, definitely been great seeing him out here, both here and on the Wednesday night events. And I'm definitely proud to see him get a win too, because of course he's been here on the broadcast for a long time. And nice to see a driver that's really been deserving to get a win finally get one. But you reckon if anything had played out differently here tonight, if you would have been able to potentially get around Mr. Suk up here this evening?
No way. Yeah, he had us covered. I mean, flat out covered. We were kind of just riding together as a team and cycled through so everybody could lead a lap. I can't remember what the rules say, but we did it anyway. And then we said, all right, let's take off. And he took off. So that was that. It wasn't, he made a statement tonight. And it's funny. He said he was swinging for the fences on a setup after qualifying. And I guess it worked.
Sometimes things just work out like that. And of course, a great display by all of y'all for the Dropping Bombs Racing team. And always a blast to see y'all out here. Anything you've got any particular thoughts about heading into USA International next week?
Yeah, I think everybody's going to be fast. Mike and I, though, we always go there and work on subs together, just see who can beat each other. And so we have a fun time, but we got some fast setups for there already. But I think everybody's going to be pretty good, so it should be a fun race.
Well, nothing like a little bit of friendly rivalry to get the racing more exciting. So I'm definitely excited to see y'all out there next week. I definitely think it's going to be a fun one. But before I send you off to go celebrate getting on the podium here again, anyone on the side of that number 99 you'd like to thank for getting you up here?
Yes, I always like to start off with the league, ASRC, and the guys behind the keyboards doing the work and getting us out here. It's a fun little league. Appreciate the broadcast and what you do and the angles that you get on there. And what you talk about on the broadcast is pretty good. And I'm rocking simspeedshop.com today on my DVR car. And, thank the guys at DVR, especially Mike and Steve. We had a fun time in the race, talking trash. And of course, I had to apologize when I bumped Steve that one time. They say I do it too often, but I'll try to be more careful.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out for Tyler, and I look forward to seeing you down in Florida next week.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
And finally, rounding out the podium here tonight, Mr. Steven Rex, another driver for Dropping Bombs Racing. If I'm not mistaken, is this my first time having you up here in the booth with me?
Yeah, I believe so. I ran a few seasons ago a couple times. I'm just out here part time and helping the guys work on setups and getting to have a little bit of fun.
Fair enough. Well, of course, congratulations on the podium here tonight. You put on a very solid run, and always great to see new drivers up here for the evening. 100 laps around this track, definitely no easy challenge. And you reckon if anything had played out differently, if you may have had anything to offer for Tyler here tonight?
No, I didn't have nothing for Tyler was better on the long run. Mike, he was just quick, couldn't do nothing. Only thing different is maybe not helping with the setups, but we're a team and it was a good time. But I was a third place car. That's the best I could do.
Third place is definitely still pretty solid, and I'd imagine that will be putting you in a pretty comfortable position in the championship standings heading into the USA International Speedway next week. What do you got feeling heading into a bit of a longer track on the schedule and a track that pretty much everyone on the iRacing.com platform has experience racing at?
Yeah, I think the racing will tighten up a little bit. It's a free track. Everybody runs that track more often with official and then hosted as well. So there's going to be, I imagine there's going to be a larger field and it's going to be a lot tighter.
Yeah, it definitely should be a fun one, and I'm certainly looking forward to seeing the Dropping Bombs racing team out there for another 100 laps next week. But of course, is there anyone you'd like to thank on the side of that number 10 machine for getting you up here on the podium here tonight?
Yeah, all the guys at DBR and Riding Dirty, you guys for putting on the race and the broadcasting. Takes time to do that stuff. I just like to race, and I appreciate everything you guys do to give us that opportunity.
Fair enough. Well, thank you for coming out and congratulations again on the podium. And of course, big thank you to all of y'all for coming out and putting on the fun racing every week. Because after all, y'all are the ones that make the broadcast possible. Y'all are the ones actually doing the entertaining stuff on the track. So I got to give my thanks to y'all out there racing as well.
Yep, thank you.
But sure enough, race fans, that is your top three finishers here this evening. Mr. Travis Sukup, Tyler McRae, Steven Rex, all drivers for the Drop and Bomb Racing team, bringing out some very fast cars here this evening. But before we send it off here for tonight, I'm going to take a quick look down at the remaining rest of the field here tonight. Back in P number 4 is going to be the 93 of Jason Gardner, with the 85 of Brian Sabelski rounding out the top 5 here this evening. 6 can go back to that 07 of Zachary Nelson, followed by the 70 of Jason Molling back in P number 7. 8th is going to go back to the 337 of Bill Watkins, followed by Corey Logan in the 24, and finally, rounding out the 10 car field here tonight, going to be the 48 of Robert Kelm. So, sure enough, as we discussed with the top 3 finishers here tonight, next week, going to be heading into the USA International Speedway, the longest track on the schedule this season. Definitely should be a little bit of a different change of pace from what we have seen so far for season number 9. Not only is the longest track on the schedule, so the driving style is going to be a bit different from what we've seen so far, but it's also one of the free rookie level tracks on the iRacing.com platform, so pretty much every driver on iRacing is going to have experience not only at this track, but this track in this car. So I definitely think it will be a very exciting race with some very tight and close racing between these drivers. But for now, that's going to be the end of our evening here tonight. Next time that I see y'all, it will officially be 2023. So a big happy new year from myself up here in the booth and everyone with ASRC. And a big thank you to all of y'all who come out and support the stream every week and support the league. It's always a blast to have y'all out here. And without further ado, I look forward to seeing all of y'all in 2023. Have a good evening, race fans, and a happy new year.